We're out for a walk today. We're going for a walk in the woods actually, but before we start I've just got to show you this dramatic view. We are up at Hardy's Monument. We're going for a walk in the woods near here. Let's get across this boggy bit to where we're going. But look at this weather being all dramatic. Like, we got a huge rainstorm there out at sea. Sunlight on the water across the Isle of Portland over there, but more rain in the air. Another big rainstorm here. Another massive one up there. I think that's over towards Dorchester. Very heavy rain. Hardy's Monument there in the background. We're going for a walk in the woods today, but even up on the top of the hill here it's boggy and wet. This could be interesting. So yeah, Hardy's Monument, been here before. This is a monument to the seafarer Hardy, not Thomas Hardy the poet. Thomas Hardy the seafarer, as in Kiss Me Hardy. Very large corvid over there on top of the hill. I think that's a raven. That's not a rook because it hasn't got a grey beak and it's too big for a carrion crow. So I think that's a raven. So there's a stretch of woodland down here that we're going to walk around if we can, if it's not too wet. And going to try to do a little bit of winter foraging. There is one particular fungus that I've foraged many times before that I'm in particular pursuit of today, which is jelly ears. So we'll see if we can find any of those. Eva's just excited to be outside. We've had quite a bit of rain recently and she's been cooped up indoors. So this is the first proper trip out in a few days and she's excited to be here. I have to keep her on the lead here because there are deer in this area and she'll chase them. So off we go through the winter woods, looking very bare and Spartan here. I can see deer have been grazing on the foot of that beech tree there. The deer will chew the bark off of the bottom of trees. In fact, this one here looks like it's been girdled. This is an elder tree. This is the kind of tree we're looking for if we want jelly ears. But yeah, this tree's been girdled by probably deer. They've gnawed all the bark off. It might be rabbits actually because it's quite low down. But we'll talk about recognising elder trees in the winter when there's no foliage. So this bark is very distinctive. This it's almost like little patterns of diamonds. It's got ridges on the bark that widen out and then narrow down again. This tree is the most common host for jelly ear fungus. In fact, I can see some here, but not big enough to pick. These are very small and immature jelly ear fungus. But we won't be picking those. We'll find some better specimens than that. There's still a bit of bark here. This tree is still alive, actually, so well, part of it is. We can see there's a bit of fresh new growth here. But yeah, something has gnawed the bark off there, although it looks like it might have just rotted. They're not particularly long-lived trees, so they complete their life cycle quite rapidly. There's more elder trees here. We'll have a look at the young wood as well because it's different. I'm just looking to see if there are any jelly ear fungus. That's an elder tree there. That's an elder. This one here is an elder. Very, very commonly clothed with moss on the older wood, just because of where they prefer to grow in damp woodland. That's another elder tree over there. This is a dead elder here, and I do see some jelly ears on it. So here we are, and these are worth picking. So this is the jelly ear fungus, most commonly found on elder. It does grow on a few other things, but predominantly elder. So recognising the tree is key to foraging this fungus. But anyway, I'm going to pick a few of these. I will leave a few as well. There's some more down on that dead branch through there. I'll leave a few as well. We won't pick all of anything we find in one place because we're going to find loads of this fungus today. So another really common feature of elder is bare dead wood. Bare branches like this where something's killed this, possibly the fungus, And this branch is dead. And the bark has come away, the bark's just loosely peeled away, and the wood underneath has got a particular yellowish greenish hue to it, and it's very smooth. So that's another factor for recognizing this tree and finding this fungus. So jelly ear is perhaps the most apt name for this fungus. It does have other names. Wood ear, I think, is one of the others. I can see more on a tree down there. And as I say, I'm not going to pick all of them from any particular one tree because there's no need to. We're going to find this abundantly. I've not actually walked very many yards and we found loads of this fungus already. So I'm not going to just wantonly pick from one place because these are the reproductive structures of this fungus. So leaving a few here is important because they're dropping spores. I will keep my eyes open for other signs of fungi across the forest floor. We will stray off the path. I'm not going to just walk along the path, but across here in the leaf litter we might find hedgehog fungi. Other fungi we might find at this time of year, we might find bluets, we might find chicken in the woods. That can grow pretty much any time of year. Winter chanterelles, although I haven't found them in this area before. And velvet shank, which we might find, but I'm still not 100% confident in identifying. So if we find something that I suspect is velvet shank, I may take a sample to do a spore print, take lots of photographs, make observations, and try to learn the fungus before I go picking it. If anybody wants to let me know which particular corvid it is we just heard calling up there, don't think that's a rook. We've got rooks in the garden. I'm fairly well accustomed to what they sound like, but that was a corvid for sure. Crow family. Let me know in the comments if you know which one it was. So we've got more elder trees here, quite healthy ones. I can't see any fungus on these. Let's see if we can have a quick look at the younger wood. Not really getting a proper look at it at this time of year, but the other thing to know about elder, even when there's no growth on it, is it quite often has a lot of upright stems. So you can see this particular specimen here has tried to grow across, but most of the stems are quite vertical on the tree. That's a common characteristic of elder. We'll just have a little look down this path. I don't think this is the path we want to take, but I see a few more elder trees down here, so we'll have a look at those as well. Right, so here's a bit of younger wood from elder, and I don't know that we're really going to get a proper look at it, but this kind of really sappy wood with these little spots on it is quite characteristic of elder. When that's in growth in the spring, this wood can often be bright green at the start, and these little bumps, these quite evenly spaced patterned bumps on the stems, are quite prominent and stand out quite a lot. Not so much in the depths of winter. But yeah, not seeing any more fungus on this one, so we'll move on. So here's another specimen of elder showing its more upright form. So this is a very straight upright tree, mainly because it's growing in amongst other trees in competition with them. But again, we've got this rough craggy bark down here clothed with moss. We've got these lighter, this is first year growth, and you can see these diamond shaped patterns on the young growth. This has actually died, this young growth, and you can see there's a jelly ear growing from that joint in the branch up there, probably another piece of dead wood. So yeah, the trick is recognize the tree and then you'll find the fungus. Gorse bushes here, including some in flower. Kissing's out of season when gorse is out of flower. Even in the depths of winter in January, there's a few gorse flowers around. I imagine the bees must find those quite welcome. It looks like we are about to be treated to a little sprinkling of rain. We've all got waterproof coats, including the dog, so we will just continue on. So more elder trees here, and again I saw some more fungus. You can actually, once you get your eye in, you can spot elder trees from a distance, and you can even actually spot the fungus from a distance, owing to its distinctive colour and slightly shiny nature, the way the light shines through it almost. So here we are. These are quite nice, fairly young fruiting bodies, but worth picking. I'll have a couple of these off this tree. We'll have a look around. And there's an example of why it's called jelly ear. That one's very ear-like. Right, I'm going to put the camera away because I need two hands for this, but I'll pick a few more of these, but again I'm going to leave some, and I think that's important. So just as a test of what I told you earlier, that I think I can recognise elder trees from a distance, I think that's an elder tree there. There's just something about the arched curvature of the outward facing branches, and then lots of straight stems going up the middle. Let's get a bit closer and I'll see if I'm right. Yes, that's an elder tree. You can tell from the way it is. You can tell from the pattern on the bark, the fact that it's clothed with moss. It's really interesting. That's probably only a 5-year-old tree, and yet it's already completely clothed with moss. It looks older than it is. They are, as I say, generally fairly short-lived tree, and they age quickly. I can see on the branches there some jelly ear fungus, but I'm not actually seeing. I think I can get down there and get them. So yeah, I can see the pale brown jelly ear fungus even from here. So yeah, there we are, and that is what I would describe as bright brown. There's not very many on this tree though, so I think I might just leave those. Here's quite a lot of jelly ears. So in this kind of wet weather we've been having, we've had several weeks of very heavy rain. The fruiting bodies of this fungus are very, very softly jelly-like and rubbery and slippery. In drier weather they will desiccate, they will dry out and become like little pieces of horn or plastic. They'll become very hard and they dry up completely, but they stay on the tree. And when it gets wet again, they rehydrate and they carry on living. Anhydrobiosis, I think, is the process. But yeah, so these fruiting bodies may not have grown this wet season. They may have grown in a previous wet season and then just gone into stasis when it dried up, and then rehydrated and carried on living when the weather got wet. And if you're foraging and you know what to look for, you can pick them in either state. You can pick them in the wet state as we're doing today, or you can pick them in the dry state and rehydrate them. I've got other videos that show the process of rehydrating them. You just drop them into water, and within the space of about 10-15 minutes they magically transform into their jelly selves. Just getting a light sprinkling of rain as we come across the top of the hill back toward the car. Hardy's monument is up there, so we've got a bit of a slog uphill to get to where we parked. Rainstorms all around us, but we're in the bright sunshine. I don't know how well it'll come out on camera, but there's a rainbow over there. Very faint rainbow. We've only got a little bit of misty rain in the air, but the rainbow is in front of the trees. Rainbows can be really quite close. In fact, what you're looking at when you see a rainbow is you're looking at part of the surface of a cone of coloured light. One day I will do a demonstration on how that works. But yeah, I don't know if you're even seeing that on video, but a faint rainbow. Fainbow. I got a fairly decent harvest of jelly ears, so let's get them back to Shrimp Cottage and see what we're going to do with them. So back at home, here is my jelly ear harvest, and they're beautiful. I think once you've identified elder trees and found these growing on them, there's almost nothing else you can mistake for it. The texture is, when they're like this and they're wet, slippery on the underside, kind of like wet leather on the top. The smell, fruity, like dried apricots. Now, if I don't want to use these straight away, I could just spread these out on a fine mesh wire rack, leave them in an airy place, and they will just dry up quite quickly and completely, and then they can be stored almost indefinitely. I'm going to use these fresh though. Anyway, so the first thing to do is just pick off bits of forest from them. So there are bits of bark and moss, sometimes a little bit of tough stalk on them, like that. So the texture of these is very strange. They are like crisp jelly. We'll see if I cut one in half actually. So if I cut this one in half, they are almost like a clear gelatinous middle with two leathery membranes. Yeah, so there's a bit of bark that's come away with that one. Don't want to be eating that. So there's one that's really fleshy, that's really thick. Let's have a look at that one in cross section. See, it's like a clear jelly in the middle. Perhaps if I slice a thin slice, is that better? Anyway, yeah, I'll finish cleaning these up. And then next in this video, I'm going to make a stew that's inspired by Spanish pig's ear casserole. This will be a version that obviously doesn't have real pig's ears in it. It has these instead. The texture is somewhat similar. So as I keep stressing, this mushroom, this fungus has a particular texture. Crisp jelly is what I keep coming back to describing it. If you don't like the texture, there is no point picking this because the texture is the main feature. It's not a strongly flavoured fungus. It's not a bad flavoured fungus. It's got a mild, sweet, slightly fruity flavour. But if you don't like the texture, there's really no point going out picking it because the texture is the main thing. It happens that I do like the texture, which is why I'm here. And that'll stand in the fridge for a few days like that. Here's everything that's going to go into my jelly ear casserole. Obviously the jelly ear mushrooms themselves. Then I've got some finely diced red onion, carrot, red pepper and celery and 2 cloves of garlic. So this is a kind of a sofrito or mirepoix or whatever you want to call it. Then I've got some tomato puree, some stock powder. I've got my porcini mushroom powder, carne de pimiento choricero. I hope I pronounced that somewhere in the proximity of correct. This is a red pepper paste, but made from a particular variety of peppers, choricero, which have got a slight heat to them, but also a really deep, earthy, robust flavour. A bit of saffron, the red string herb spice infused in water. And then later in the cooking, I'm just going to tip in a tin of butter beans. First thing to do, I just need to fry these off. Bit of olive oil, and we'll just let that come up to temperature. Alright, and then all of that lot in there. And I'm going to fry this off really gently so that it all goes translucent, the flavours all deepen and combine. I'm not looking for any deeply browned caramelisation here. Meanwhile, back over here, there are a few things that can go straight in the casserole dish. My jelly ear mushrooms, or fungus. And the pieces here, I don't probably want these whole in the dish. They're a little bit big. I'm looking for pieces that I can pick up with a spoon. So, cut through that way. I'll do the same in the other direction. Just cutting it up into manageable chunks. The texture of this stuff is so strange. It's a bit like, I've been thinking some more about this, it's a bit like a soft seaweed, or actually if you've had jelly made from agar, it's a bit like that in the kind of crisp jelliness of it. And you can hear that crispness when I'm slicing it here. You can hear the way the knife sort of goes through it. It resists and then yields with a little bit of a snap. Anyway, that all goes in there, together with my stock powder, which seems like a lot, but it is a relatively low salt stock powder, so that is adding the salt that I need for this recipe, but not in excess. My porcini mushroom powder, I'll have a teaspoonful of that in there. So a pig's ear casserole would have a meaty vibe to it from the meat. This will pretty much make up for that. The saffron can go in there. I'm just going to rinse out that glass so we don't waste a single drop. And that's it for now. Back over here, these vegetables are sizzling away nicely and there's lots of moisture coming off. I mean, we are going to add some liquid anyway, but liquid of a very particular kind. Just going to move those things around so that they all get a turn in contact with the pan. You can see this is starting to turn translucent, but we're not quite there yet. Later on I will need to deglaze that frying pan. For that I'm going to use some of my homemade cider. This is just the regular cider. This has had a little bit of sugar added to bottle condition it. This is not the honey finish, this is just the regular sugar finish cider. I'm half expecting this to be quite fizzy, but we'll see when we open it. Oh no, just a very gentle little release of pressure there. Now I'll pour myself a pint of this cider first, quickly before the sediment rises up. It's still a little bit cloudy, but it did settle. So we've got a pint of not so cloudy cider. There is a sediment layer at the bottom, but that's fine. I'm actually going to agitate that because I want that sediment. That's all yeast and apple solids and whatnot. I want that, and I'm going to use that in my deglaze on the pan. But the cider, quite a dry cider, ever so slight sparkle. Flavour's definitely improved since it was bottled. It's mellowed, it's still quite dry, but yeah, there's more of a cidery aroma now. I don't know quite how else to describe it, but not bad for a dry cider. Back over here, these vegetables are looking nicely done now, and so I'm just going to clear them to the sides and reserve the hottest part of the pan here. Into there, 3 teaspoons of that chorizo paste, tomato puree, what's that, about 2 tablespoons full, and I'm going to gently cook those. Right, now I think I'm going to turn the heat up and get that really sizzling before I deglaze. Yeah, you can see we've got some little bits, little places where it's sticking. I'm just starting to toast a bit on the bottom of the pan. Okay, I got my oven preheating now to 160 Celsius fan oven, because this is going to be cooked fairly low and slow. Could do it in a slow cooker actually, but I started a bit late in the day. Right, now I'm going to deglaze the pan with some of my cider. That's probably about 200 ml that went in there, just to loosen everything off and dissolve it. And then I'm going to bring this back up to a simmer before that goes in the casserole dish. And now that lot goes into there. We are going to need a bit more liquid than that. And so what I'm going to do here is just wash out the pan with that last little bit of cider. Pick up those last little bits of flavour in there. I think that's going to need a lot more liquid. So just giving it a stir to combine all those dry ingredients that were in there, the stock powder and everything else. Yeah, a little bit more liquid in the form of cider, because why not? Right, that's been in the oven for about 3/4 of an hour now, and everything in there is actually probably already thoroughly cooked. At this point, my butter beans are going to go in. I'll just stir those through so that they can be immersed in the casserole. This is a good opportunity to have a little taste as well, so we can taste for seasoning, decide if we want to adjust anything. So I don't think it would hurt to add some more of that red pepper paste, so I'm going to put, so that's basically half of that jar, which was 140 grams, is going to go in there. That's just going to go back in the oven for maybe 20 minutes, just to infuse a bit of flavour into those beans and just bring everything together. But already looking quite nice. I don't know what happened to my glass of cider, but also I feel a little bit wonky. In case you're wondering why I put it over one side of the oven, that's because there was also an experimental loaf of bread cooking in the oven, which we're going to have with this. Okay, now I very nearly forgot my Spanish thyme. Let's pretend that wasn't forgetfulness and that was actually deliberate, and I'm adding it late here because something aroma. Just a little pinch of my Spanish thyme. I'm going to stir that in. That will have time to infuse into the casserole. I should have added that earlier. It'll be fine. But yeah, since I'm making a Spanish-inspired dish, it seems a bit amiss not to include a bit of my authentic foraged Spanish thyme. Okay, that's done. bubbling and boiling throughout. Obviously, I'm not going to try to serve this just yet. It needs to sit for a little bit first. That does just afford me an opportunity to check out this bread, which should now have cooled down enough to slice. I said it was an experimental loaf. It was not that bold an experiment. It's a wholemeal and multi-seed loaf with extra gluten. So it's got about 40 grams of extra powdered gluten in there instead of some of the flour, just to increase the protein and hopefully make it nice and fluffy and light inside. Let's have a look. Looks good. Yeah, we've got a nice fluffy, springy bread. It's probably going to be a little bit on the chewy side, and you can see it's done a weird thing at the top here, but yeah, okay, that'll go well with my stew, I think. Time for the main event. My wood ear and bean casserole. That looks good to me. Okay, I'm going to have a tiny taste here and then we'll retire to the table and give it a proper taste. So let's put it with the actual mushrooms in it and bean. And I have to blow on that because you can see it's piping hot. Good. Let's go to the table. Okay. Now I already know this is going to want some black pepper on it because I like black pepper and I have tasted it. And like I say, these mushrooms, they don't have a lot of flavour, so the flavours of this dish are from everything else. But the texture is just delicate and intriguing. There is just something quite sensuous about the texture of these things. The delicate, slippery, jelly-like, crispy lusciousness of them. Very good. That's turned out very nice. So that's about it for today's episode of Walk, Forage, Cook. I hope that's been interesting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.